People know that Charlie sensed that he was going to die tomorrow is an absolute fact. Why these individuals are all being quiet about that is a massive question mark.
Something about this story is not adding up, and more people are starting to notice the cracks every single day. What first looked like a tragic and straightforward narrative has now turned into a storm of conflicting timelines, emotional interviews, alleged private conversations, and growing public suspicion. Now, Charlie Kirk's mother is reportedly preparing to break her silence, and people believe what she may reveal
Was not messaging people the day before saying, I'm going to be murdered, they're coming after me.
Charlie Kirk's mom is stepping he had taken.
You have the Times Events reel able to say this. That's the narrative. It was written. This is the perfect screenplay.
Could completely shake the story everyone thought they understood. Behind the scenes, there are claims of tense private meetings, pressure-filled conversations, alleged warning texts, and major contradictions that critics say cannot all exist at the same time. One version of events describes fear, bulletproof vests, and serious security concerns. Another paints the exact same night as calm, routine, and completely normal.
Jump in here and tell you that's a lie. What we know happens thereafter is Charlie concludes this call with Josh and the rabbi, and then he sends off text messages to his security chief, Dan Flood.
So which version is real? And why do the details seem to keep changing every time the story is told again? Tonight, we're breaking down the timelines, the reported Zoom call, the claims surrounding Charlie's final days, and the questions exploding across social media right now. Because the deeper people dig into this story, the more intense and complicated it becomes. And if Catherine finally decides to speak publicly, this entire situation could shift in a massive way. Charlie Kirk's mother is finally stepping into the spotlight, and what she's reportedly been saying behind closed doors is shaking up the entire situation in a massive way.
Erika and Charlie heard about these curses, and that news genuinely rattled Erika in particular. She knew Christian teaching on the subject. She loved Charlie, absolutely. And she was scared when she heard of the curses Jezebel had called up.
After Erika faced public accusations of changing the narrative around Charlie's final days, a totally different version of what happened during his last night has started spreading fast. And according to people following the story closely, this new account comes with details and evidence that many believe carry serious weight. What started off as quiet whispers in the background has now exploded into loud and direct contradictions that people online can't stop talking about.
I knew that there were people out there that hated us with deep, deep passion of hate. But it didn't scare us. Never. He was never afraid of that. Neither was I. Obviously, we protect our children. You know, we don't show their faces on the internet.
More people are now questioning which version of events is actually true, especially as new claims continue surfacing and putting even more pressure on everyone involved. The timeline Erika shared publicly is now being examined piece by piece, and critics have been calling out several parts of her story. She already faced major backlash after repeatedly claiming that Charlie was deeply afraid for his safety in the days leading up to September 10th. But now, people are saying the narrative seems to be changing again. According to online discussions,
So much so that she and Charlie contacted a friend who I believe she said was a Catholic priest, but definitely a friend, and asked him to come over and pray with them over Charlie the night before he was murdered. She eventually worked it through, and so did Charlie. That, as she later told me, will form but not prosper.
Erika is being viewed less as the worried wife asking for caution and more as a strong and commanding figure who was taking control behind the scenes. And that shift in perception is where the situation starts getting seriously complicated. Fresh claims are now spreading about a private dinner Erika reportedly organized on Charlie's final night. And the details connected to that gathering are making a lot of people uncomfortable. Reports circulating online allege that during the dinner, a Zoom call was set up with a rabbi based in Israel. According to those claims, the rabbi encouraged Charlie to rethink and possibly step back from certain public positions he had recently been expressing.
Huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Somebody writes, Charlie writes, Jewish donors play into all of the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to be pro-Israel.
If those claims turn out to be true, they immediately raise major questions about what was really being discussed behind closed doors on the night before Charlie's death. That one detail alone has sparked intense reactions online, with many people now looking at the entire situation from a completely different angle. 3 questions keep coming up again and again. Why that night? Why that conversation? And why at that exact moment? The optics around that reported dinner already seem unusual to many observers, but the timing has made the situation even more controversial when placed next to all the other claims now circulating. Some people are openly wondering whether that final evening felt less like a quiet, personal gathering and more like a serious, behind-the-scenes strategy meeting. As more discussions spread online, critics continue picking apart every reported detail and asking what may have really been happening during those final hours. That is an incredibly heavy idea for people to process, and the attention surrounding it is growing even louder as more viewers hear about the claims and start comparing them to the different public versions of events that have already been shared.
That was our last day. It was our last day. Like, we always lived as if it was the last day. That's why Charlie's speeches were so good. But again, it wasn't anything that, you would think any different.
The more people look at the timelines, statements, and reported details side by side, the more intense the debate becomes, with many online demanding clearer answers and questioning which account truly lines up with everything that has been alleged. Another part of this situation pulling major attention is the reported reaction from Charlie's mother, Catherine, after she allegedly learned about what was being discussed behind closed doors during that time. According to accounts now circulating, her response was anything but quiet or diplomatic. People familiar with the situation claim she reacted strongly, and the impact of that reaction reportedly did not fade away after the first wave of attention. Now, 5 months after Charlie's assassination, the media spotlight still has not backed off for even a second. Public debate continues growing online, with every new claim, timeline detail, and reported disagreement adding even more pressure to an already intense situation.
With this rabbi, was it Wojcicki, whatever his last name is, you're not going to just call like Dennis Prager, who you're apparently writing a Shabbat Shalom book with. It seems a little suspect. So you're actually clarifying for us something that's amazing. This is a stunning admission. Okay, because we know that when Charlie got off of this phone call, he texts that evening a text message to Dan Flood and
The attention around this story still feels incredibly intense, almost like the situation refuses to calm down or fully settle. Erika has remained highly visible the entire time, appearing in back-to-back interviews, public events, and carefully staged photo opportunities at major gatherings. No matter where the conversation goes, cameras always seem to be focused right back on her again and again. Since Charlie passed, she has continued staying in the public eye without much pause, and that constant visibility is becoming a major topic of discussion online. With every new headline returning to her perspective, her statements, and her emotional retelling of events, more people are beginning to point out what they believe is a repeating pattern. Critics and commentators alike are now closely watching how the story keeps circling back to Erika's version of what happened and the way it is being presented to the public. But one question keeps showing up everywhere online, and people refuse to let it go. Where are Charlie's actual parents in all of this? That conversation has exploded across social media and discussion forums, with many people pointing out that his parents have barely been visible in the public coverage surrounding their son's death and legacy. At the same time, Erika has said very little publicly about Charlie's parents. Instead, she spoke about how her own mother played a major motherly role in Charlie's life, and that comment immediately sparked strong reactions online.
First and foremost, I just want to say he's so full of crap. The idea that Charlie had just gotten back from Korea and was like, oh, please help me, Josh Hammer. You're a complete idiot. Please help me learn how to speak to college students. Josh Hammer and a rabbi who lives in Israel. Like, there was nobody else available. You know what time it must have been in Israel for him to organize this call? Why is he doing it?
For a lot of people following this story closely, that framing felt unusual and highly intentional, almost as if attention was being shifted away from Charlie's biological family and toward a completely different emotional narrative. That perception has created even more debate, especially among critics who believe important voices connected to Charlie's life have not been fully heard in public discussions. And as the spotlight keeps growing, more people are openly questioning why his parents have remained so absent from the center of the conversation. Now, according to a source said to be close to Charlie's mother, Catherine, his parents have been handling their grief the way many families do after losing someone suddenly and tragically. Reports claim they have chosen to mourn privately, staying away from cameras and avoiding the nonstop noise and chaos that has surrounded nearly every public part of this story. While headlines and public debates continue spreading online, Charlie's parents are reportedly keeping their distance from the spotlight and focusing on their personal loss instead. That contrast has stood out to many people watching the situation closely, especially as public attention around the case continues growing louder by the day. That decision is completely understandable, and many people feel it deserves real respect and privacy during such a painful time. But this is also where the situation reportedly becomes far more tense behind the scenes. According to that same source, what has been affecting Catherine the most is not only the non-stop media attention surrounding her son's death. Reports now claim that what truly troubles her is the way Erika's description of Charlie's final days has seemingly continued to shift over time. That allegation has added another layer of controversy to an already emotional story, especially as more people online begin comparing earlier public statements with newer versions of events.
But she's also holding aside that 2 hours after this screenshot, if you look at the timestamps, 2 hours after that, I and a few others were in a small Zoom chat, a small Zoom call with Charlie the night before he was killed, that Charlie organized. Charlie organized this Zoom call for the express purpose of trying to make sure that he had all the best answers, the best messaging advice for how to speak about Jewish-Christian relations and the Israel question on college.
Critics say those differences are becoming harder to ignore, and the growing debate is only making the entire situation feel even more intense. And according to people said to be close to Catherine, these are not being viewed as small mistakes or simple memory slips caused by stress or grief. The concern, according to those reports, is that the changes involve major and very specific details that could dramatically reshape how people understand Charlie's final night. Sources claim that this is what has been causing ongoing pain and frustration within the family. Catherine reportedly believes her son was deeply unsettled near the end of his life. not just exhausted from work, overwhelmed, or worn down by a non-stop public schedule, but struggling with something that felt much more serious and personal. According to those claims, she believed his emotional state went beyond the usual pressures tied to a high-profile role. And that belief is now becoming a major part of the growing public conversation surrounding his final days.
Out of context screenshot of Charlie Kirk being very upset that a Jewish donor was withholding his $2 million donation. And she used this as an attempt to say, oh, Josh Hammer's lying, that Charlie remained pro-Israel until his final moments.
And then comes the detail that has people talking louder than anything else connected to this story. According to an insider claim now spreading online, Charlie had allegedly started questioning Erika herself during those final days. That is not a small accusation or something people are brushing aside easily. It is a deeply serious claim that completely changes how many observers are looking at the events surrounding those final hours, that final night, and the morning Charlie reportedly left without saying goodbye. As discussions continue growing across social media and online forums, this allegation has become one of the most controversial parts of the entire situation. People are now re-examining earlier statements, timelines, and reported interactions through a totally different lens, with many questioning what may have really been happening behind closed doors during that period. On top of everything already being discussed online, that same source now claims Catherine is seriously considering a formal interview with Candace Owens. According to the report, the purpose would be to share her own understanding of how Charlie was truly feeling before everything happened, and to finally present a perspective that many people believe has been missing from the public conversation entirely. If that interview actually takes place, it could have a massive and immediate impact on the way people view this entire situation. Interest around the story is already extremely intense, and many viewers keep returning to the same unanswered questions again and again. Why does the narrative appear to keep changing? Why are there now public disagreements and contradictions surrounding whether Charlie was reportedly dealing with serious threats or increased security concerns before September 10th? Those questions continue fueling nonstop debate online, and a public interview from Catherine could push the conversation into an even bigger spotlight. Every time Erika speaks publicly, critics say new details seem to appear that do not fully match earlier interviews, and those repeated inconsistencies have caused more people to question how stable the overall timeline really is. Online discussions have grown more intense as viewers compare past statements side by side and point out details they believe have changed over time. The first major public version of events was introduced during Erika's September 21st in-person interview with the New York Times. And that was the moment the official timeline first started taking a clear and structured form. At the time, many people accepted the account without heavily challenging specific details or asking deeper follow-up questions. According to that version of events, the night before Charlie traveled to Utah, he and Erika reportedly had dinner in the Phoenix area with a friend described as a faith leader. The stated purpose of the gathering was reportedly to pray over Charlie's upcoming tour, which was expected to include around 20 college campuses. The report stated that both Erika and the friend appeared deeply concerned during that dinner, and one detail instantly grabbed people's attention. According to the account, Erika reportedly urged Charlie to start wearing a bulletproof vest before his upcoming appearances. That single detail dramatically changed the tone of the story because it created a picture of growing fear, serious anxiety, and a very real sense of possible danger that seemed far beyond ordinary concerns before public events. The account went even further. When Charlie reportedly hesitated about taking those extra precautions, the faith leader allegedly suggested another level of protection, encouraging him to consider speaking behind bulletproof glass during appearances. That part of the story added even more intensity to the public reaction, with many people questioning what kind of concerns were being discussed privately at the time. That added suggestion made the situation sound even more serious, creating the image of a dinner table where everyone involved truly believed a major threat could be hanging over Charlie's upcoming tour. For many people following the story, it painted a tense and emotionally charged picture that immediately stood out. That was also the first version of events the public heard. Organized, emotional, and seemingly consistent from beginning to end. At the time, many viewers saw it as a clear explanation of what happened leading into those final days. But once people started revisiting those statements and comparing them with comments made in later interviews, new doubts began surfacing fast. Critics and online commentators started pointing out details they believed no longer matched up cleanly, leading to growing questions about whether the original account fully aligned with everything said afterward. And that is exactly where the scrutiny started becoming much louder and far more intense. Erika's original version of events established that both she and the faith leader, later identified by Megyn Kelly as a Catholic priest, were reportedly deeply concerned about Charlie's safety. According to her account, they strongly encouraged him to take serious security precautions in case someone tried to harm him. That framing carried major weight because it placed the idea of immediate danger right at the center of that final dinner. It was not presented as a vague concern or general anxiety about public life. Instead, the conversation was described in a way that suggested people close to Charlie believed there could be a serious and specific threat surrounding his upcoming appearances. As more people revisited those statements, critics began questioning how that intense level of concern fits alongside later comments and evolving public accounts. And that growing disconnect is exactly why the scrutiny surrounding the story has continued building online. Then, on September 23rd, Megyn Kelly introduced another layer to the story, claiming Erika was reportedly shaken by a Jezebel article that referenced something described as a curse involving Charlie. And that was the exact moment when a huge number of people online suddenly paused and started questioning the narrative much more aggressively. Critics immediately began asking whether people were really expected to believe that an online opinion piece was what sparked such an intense level of fear and security concern during that dinner. To many observers, that explanation did not fully add up. Charlie had spent years facing harsh media coverage, political criticism, controversies, and non-stop public attacks. None of that was new territory for him, and according to critics, it had never before led to this kind of reportedly urgent push for bulletproof vests and protective glass. That is why the conversation online quickly shifted from sympathy to skepticism. More people started comparing the earlier explanations with later interviews, and the growing differences between those accounts became impossible for critics to ignore. So why would this one article from this one outlet at that exact moment suddenly turn a private dinner into something that sounded like a full-scale security scare? That question hit hard online, and a lot of viewers immediately felt the explanation did not fully make sense. For many people following the story closely, that detail created a major inconsistency that was difficult to ignore. Critics argued that the reaction being described seemed far more intense than what would normally come from a single opinion article, especially considering the level of media criticism Charlie had already dealt with for years. Once those doubts started spreading, they moved fast and gained serious traction online. More viewers began revisiting earlier interviews and comparing details across multiple accounts, and the growing skepticism surrounding the timeline only became louder from there. Then came November 22nd, and Erika's live interview with Megyn Kelly. And that is when many people felt the entire tone of the story changed in a major way. In this version of events, Erika reportedly said that neither she nor Charlie was afraid at all on September 9th. Suddenly, the night was described as completely normal and routine before a standard speaking appearance. According to this account, there was no tension, no serious fear in the room, and no urgent conversation about security concerns. Just an ordinary evening and business as usual. But when viewers placed that version next to the earlier account, the difference stood out instantly. The previous story had painted a picture of urgent concern involving bulletproof vests, bulletproof glass, and a faith leader who was reportedly deeply worried about Charlie's safety. The newer version sounded dramatically calmer and far less alarming. For critics and online commentators, the contrast between those two accounts was impossible to miss. People began openly pointing out how different the emotional framing felt from one interview to the next, and that comparison fueled even more public scrutiny surrounding the timeline. One version of the story sounds like a serious, high-alert discussion centered around possible physical danger and urgent security concerns. The other sounds like a completely ordinary night before a routine public appearance with nothing unusual happening at all. For many critics, that difference does not feel small or easy to explain away through stress, emotion, or fading memory. They argue that the contrast changes the entire understanding of what that night was actually like and why certain conversations may have happened behind closed doors. That is exactly why people continue demanding clearer timelines, documented details, and more consistency between the different public accounts being shared. As the comparisons keep spreading online, more viewers are focusing on the growing gap between the earlier descriptions of fear and protection measures and the later portrayal of a calm and uneventful evening. And according to critics, the contradictions keep getting even harder to ignore. In the earlier New York Times interview, Erika reportedly said she was so concerned about Charlie's safety that she personally urged him to wear a bulletproof vest before the event. She also claimed he felt like something was not right ahead of the UVU appearance, describing his condition by saying his adrenal glands were just going off. She later added another very specific detail, saying he got up and I could hear him eating something in the kitchen. That image stood out immediately to many people because it painted a vivid picture of someone restless, unable to sleep, and clearly unsettled during the night. Critics now point to those comments as being difficult to reconcile with later descriptions of the evening as calm, normal, and completely routine. To many viewers comparing the interviews side by side, the emotional tone and level of concern sound dramatically different, and that contrast continues fueling more questions online. That detail creates the image of someone dealing with real anxiety and deep uneasiness about what was ahead, which makes the later description of September 9th as calm and completely ordinary stand out even more sharply. For critics following the story closely, those two versions feel impossible to fully reconcile as descriptions of the exact same night. That is why many people online now point to this specific contradiction as one of the biggest breaking points in the entire narrative. On one side, there is a picture of fear, restlessness, and serious concern. On the other, there is a version of events described as peaceful, routine, and emotionally uneventful. The gap between those portrayals has become a major focus of public debate, with critics arguing that it raises larger questions about which account most accurately reflects what was really happening behind closed doors. Then Candace introduced claims that pushed the entire conversation surrounding that evening into an even more intense direction. According to sources she referenced publicly, the September 9th dinner allegedly involved more than just a Catholic priest. Candace claimed there was also communication connected to a rabbi based in Israel. And based on what she shared, the discussion reportedly became tense rather than calm or encouraging. She alleged that serious pressure was being placed on Charlie regarding certain public positions and political issues, turning the conversation into something far more confrontational than simple spiritual guidance. Candace also claimed that incentives were allegedly brought up during the discussion in a way that critics said sounded more like a negotiation than a prayer session. Those allegations immediately sparked major reactions online because they dramatically changed how some people viewed the purpose and tone of that evening. On top of that, Candace further alleged that on September 8th, Charlie had sent a message suggesting he planned to step back from involvement in issues connected to Israel. If true, critics argue that would not have been viewed as a small adjustment or routine political shift. It would have represented a major change that could potentially affect donor relationships, political alliances, and broader organizational dynamics tied to his public role. After Candace spoke publicly about those claims, TPUSA-affiliated podcaster Josh Hammer responded with a different version of the timeline. According to Hammer, the message in question was reportedly sent on September 9th instead of September 8th. He also claimed that after that exchange, Charlie allegedly joined a Zoom call where specific talking points were discussed and guidance was reportedly given. Now, when people place all of those claims side by side, it creates an extremely intense and controversial picture. Discussions online have focused on the combination of reported messages about stepping back from a major political issue, a heated Zoom call involving a rabbi in another country, allegations of pressure and incentives, conflicting timelines from different public accounts, and questions surrounding security preparations before the following day's event. Critics argue that the growing number of conflicting details has only fueled more public skepticism, especially as people continue trying to piece together what may have really happened during those final hours behind closed doors. And then came the reported text message that made a lot of people stop cold when they first heard about it. According to claims now circulating online, right after that call, Charlie allegedly sent a message to Dan Flood and Andrew Covey saying, "They're going to kill me." If that message were ever confirmed as authentic and verifiable, critics argue it would dramatically change how people interpret everything that followed. At that point, the fear would no longer seem connected to an online article, a rumored curse, or ordinary stress before a speaking tour. Instead, it would suggest Charlie believed there was a direct and immediate threat involving real individuals, and that possibility has become one of the most explosive parts of the public discussion surrounding the case. Because of that, many people online keep asking why the reported Zoom call has not been publicly explained in greater detail. Critics are also questioning why there has not been a clearer public breakdown of the alleged messages in which Charlie reportedly expressed serious fear for his safety. Those unanswered questions continue fueling intense speculation and nonstop debate across social media and political circles. And then came the reported text message that completely stunned people following the story online. According to claims now circulating right after that call, Charlie allegedly texted Dan Flood and Andrew Covey saying, "They're going to unalive me." If that message were ever confirmed as authentic and verifiable, critics argue it would completely reshape how people view everything that happened afterward. At that point, the concern would no longer seem tied to an online article, rumors about a curse, or normal stress before a speaking tour. Instead, it would point toward something far more immediate, personal, and serious. For something Charlie himself allegedly believed involved real and identifiable individuals. Because of that, many people continue asking why the reported Zoom call has not been publicly explained in greater detail. Critics also question why there has not been a clearer public explanation regarding the alleged texts, where Charlie reportedly expressed fear for his safety. Those unanswered questions have only intensified the debate online. Instead, critics argue that the public keeps receiving changing versions of events, partial explanations, that spark even more confusion, and details that do not fully connect into one clear timeline. And with every new claim or interview, the pressure surrounding the story appears to grow even stronger rather than moving closer to resolution. Now, strong rumors are spreading that Candace may invite Charlie's mother, Catherine, onto her podcast to finally speak publicly in her own words. According to those reports, she could share her personal understanding of Charlie's final days, her perspective on the events that unfolded, and her reaction to the public narratives that have circulated without her direct involvement. If that interview actually happens, many people believe it could dramatically shift the entire public conversation. Viewers are not only looking for emotional reactions or dramatic headlines anymore. More and more people are demanding transparency, consistency, and a clear version of events supported by details that can be independently verified, instead of multiple accounts that seem to change depending on the interview or who is asking the questions. Because right now, a lot of people feel the timeline still does not appear fully settled. Critics continue pointing to details they believe keep changing, while more questions seem to surface instead of clear resolutions. And once public trust starts getting shaken by visible inconsistencies, the pressure surrounding a story like this usually only grows louder and more intense over time. Many viewers now believe that eventually more concrete and verifiable information will need to come forward to separate confirmed facts from non-stop speculation. Until that happens, people will likely keep comparing interviews, statements, timelines, and reported details line by line in search of answers that feel clear and consistent. And if Charlie's mother ultimately decides to speak publicly and directly, many believe that moment could become a major turning point in the entire conversation surrounding these events. Her perspective would likely draw enormous attention, especially from people who feel key voices connected to Charlie's life have not yet been fully heard in public discussions. What do you think is really happening here? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with anyone following the story so they can weigh in too. Stay tuned for more updates as this conversation continues growing online.